On a late June night, the United States launched a major military operation. It was codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer. The date was June 21st, continuing into the early hours of June 22, 2025. This was a direct and targeted attack on Iran's nuclear program. The mission involved a significant show of American air power. Over 125 aircraft filled the skies over Iran, a complex and coordinated effort designed to achieve maximum surprise and effectiveness. The goal was clear: to stop Iran from getting closer to building a nuclear weapon. This action followed months of rising tensions and intelligence reports about Iran's progress. The operation was authorized by President Donald Trump. It marked a new and serious phase in the long-standing dispute over Iran's nuclear ambitions. The United States had withdrawn from the 2015 nuclear deal years earlier, in 2018. Since then, Iran had increased its uranium enrichment activities significantly. Intelligence from the US and the United Nations estimated that Iran had enough material for several bombs. The White House decided that a military strike was necessary to prevent Iran from reaching the point of no return. The world watched as the events unfolded under the cover of darkness. The strike force was impressive and technologically advanced. It included 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, which are known for their ability to evade enemy radar. These bombers were crucial for reaching heavily defended targets without being detected. They were supported by decoy aircraft to confuse Iranian air defenses. A U.S. submarine also participated, launching more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the sea. The entire operation was executed with precision. U.S. officials later confirmed that Iranian forces were caught completely by surprise, with no U.S. planes facing enemy fire during the mission. This attack represented the first-ever combat use of a very powerful weapon. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, also known as the Bunker Buster, was deployed. This 30,000-pound bomb is specifically designed to destroy targets buried deep underground. A total of 14 of these massive bombs were used, alongside approximately 75 other precision-guided weapons. The scale of the munitions used showed the seriousness of the mission. The objective was not just to send a message, but to inflict real, lasting damage on Iran's most protected nuclear facilities and delay its atomic aspirations. Initial reports from the Pentagon and the White House painted a picture of total success. President Trump stated that the targeted sites were completely and totally obliterated. However, later and more detailed assessments revealed a more complicated reality. The damage varied greatly from one site to another. Of the 3 facilities hit, the Fordo fuel enrichment plant suffered the most severe damage. This site, built deep inside a mountain, was a primary target because it was used for uranium enrichment. The powerful GBU-57 Bunker Buster bombs proved effective here, collapsing much of the underground facility. The situation at the Natanz nuclear facility was different. While the site did sustain damage, it was not as comprehensive as the strikes on Fordo. U.S. bombs successfully destroyed the only metal conversion facility at Natanz, a critical component that experts say could take years for Iran to rebuild. However, the attack had its limits. It is believed that some of the underground centrifuge halls and stockpiles of uranium were not destroyed. Since 2023, Iran had been digging deeper tunnels at Natanz. These new depths were likely beyond the reach of the bombs used in the operation, leaving parts of the program intact. The third target, the Isfahan nuclear site, appeared to have escaped with the least amount of damage. The U.S. strikes on Isfahan used Tomahawk missiles, which are effective against surface targets. These missiles hit their intended targets on the surface of the facility, but the most critical parts of the Isfahan site are not on the surface. Much like at Natanz, Iran had moved its valuable enriched uranium into deep, fortified tunnels. These bunkers were considered too deep to be reached by the weapons deployed against them. As a result, the core of the Isfahan facility remained secure and largely untouched by the attack. The mixed results show the incredible challenge of destroying a well-defended and dispersed nuclear program from the air. While Fordo was a significant setback for Iran, the survival of key parts of Natanz and Isfahan means their work was not completely stopped. The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog, Reall Grossi, expressed skepticism about the long-term impact. He suggested that Iran could likely resume its production of enriched uranium within a matter of months. This discrepancy between the initial claims of victory and the detailed damage assessment highlights the complex truth of the operation's outcome. The decision to limit the attack to just 3 sites was a deliberate choice made at the highest levels. President Trump and his national security team were presented with a much larger military plan. This more extensive option was developed by U.S. Central Command. It proposed a sustained bombing campaign that would last for weeks. This broader plan would have targeted not just 3 but 6 different sites. It aimed to cripple not only Iran's nuclear infrastructure but also its air defense systems and missile capabilities. It was designed to be a decisive blow to Iran's military power. However, the president ultimately rejected this more aggressive plan. The primary reason was the high risk associated with a larger operation. A weeks-long campaign would have greatly increased the chances of significant casualties, both military and civilian. There was a strong belief within the administration that such a large-scale attack would almost certainly lead to a wider and more protracted war in the Middle East. The goal was to set back the nuclear program, not to get pulled into a major new conflict. The potential for a long and bloody war was a risk the president was unwilling to take. Instead, the White House opted for what they saw as a more surgical approach. Operation Midnight Hammer was designed as a one-off, limited strike. By focusing only on Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan, the administration hoped to send a strong message without triggering an all-out war. These 3 sites were considered the most critical to Iran's immediate ability to produce a nuclear weapon. The strategy was to deliver a sharp, painful blow that would disrupt the program and force Iran back to the negotiating table, all while keeping the operation contained and avoiding a dangerous escalation. This choice reflects a difficult balancing act in modern warfare. The U.S. wanted to demonstrate its power and resolve to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran. At the same time, it sought to manage the risks and avoid the unpredictable consequences of a full-scale military confrontation. The limited strike was a calculated gamble. It was an attempt to achieve a specific military objective, delaying the nuclear program, without paying the high price of a regional war. The decision to reject the larger plan shows a preference for a contained conflict over a much broader and riskier engagement. In the weeks following Operation Midnight Hammer, experts have worked to understand its true impact. The consensus is that the strikes did set back Iran's nuclear program, but the length of that delay is a subject of debate. The destruction at the Fordo facility is considered the most significant achievement of the operation. Experts believe it could take Iran up to 2 years to repair the damage and resume enrichment activities at that specific site. This gives the United States and its allies a window of time to pursue other options, such as diplomacy, to resolve the nuclear issue. For the other sites, the outlook is less clear. At Natanz and Isfahan, where the damage was less severe, Iran could potentially resume its work much sooner. Some experts, including those at the International Atomic Energy Agency, predict that production could restart in just a matter of months. A key U.S. goal was also to degrade Iran's ability to defend itself from future attacks. In this, the operation was more successful. Reports indicate that much of Iran's air defense network was destroyed during the strikes, which would make any potential follow-up operations much easier to conduct. Now, the focus shifts to what comes next. The United States and its European partners have reportedly given Iran a deadline. They expect Iran to agree to a new nuclear deal by the end of August 2025. This diplomatic pressure is backed by a credible military threat. U.S. and Israeli officials are closely monitoring the damaged sites using satellites and other intelligence sources. They have made it clear that any attempt by Iran to rebuild the destroyed facilities or to refuse negotiations could lead to renewed military attacks. The situation remains incredibly tense, with both sides weighing their next moves carefully. The future is uncertain. The strikes have changed the dynamic in the region, but they have not solved the underlying problem. Iran must now decide whether to risk further attacks by continuing its nuclear program or to return to diplomacy. The United States and its allies must decide how to use this temporary advantage to achieve a lasting solution. The coming months will be critical in determining whether Operation Midnight Hammer was a step toward peace and stability, or simply a pause before an even more dangerous confrontation. The world is watching to see if diplomacy can succeed where bombs have left a fragile and temporary peace.